Gig.
where did you get the entrepreneurial, like, where did you decide, where did the process start, where did the seed start being planted in your mind that I'm going to do this for a living and I'm going to do it for myself versus let me go work for Warner Brothers and like Dowd and become a union worker, right? I'm
Well,
serious.
I was gigging 7 days a week, probably 10 gigs a week during the same period of time where I'd be going down to this recording studio when nobody was there. But ultimately, I moved to Chicago. I got married. I was still gigging a little bit in Chicago, and I had a small recording setup in a condo in Chicago and continued that and started recording people out of an apartment building in the same way that I was recording my friend back in Cleveland. Those were paying gigs, unbelievably low paying gigs, but that's how that started in a home studio, which was never heard, not a thing back then. And I would get phone calls from the doorman of this building that I was upsetting the neighbors because I was making too much noise. But I was that same Illinois Entertainer. I would put an ad in the Illinois Entertainer to have people come and hire me to record little tiny demos. So that's where those seeds were really planted as far as making a living doing this. And I loved doing it, and I was way more interested in the technical side of the stuff, regardless of my musical background, than writing songs and becoming an artist. One thing led to another, frankly, and I had the ability and source from, frankly, family money of the woman that I married, where I was able to take out a very, to me at that point, very large loan, which is an unbelievable amount of pressure, and build a recording studio in a building at the very entrance to downtown Chicago. And that's where that started. And I took what was a little hobby out of a condo and started a business, which was an unbelievable amount of pressure to borrow money from your wife's family to start a business.
You think? You think?
Yes, I
Oh
do
my
think
God. I
it was
wonder,
very stressful. It was
it
very
makes
stressful.
it makes me think about, like, wow, how long was that legal agreement? Like, I'm trying to, like, I think back to my own marriage, and I've been married 30 years. And I just remember how much pressure I felt, like, just asking for $1,000 to help build our fireplace. So, like,
Yeah.
I felt, and I
No,
felt I
it
was,
was a loan. It was on paper. I had to write a check to accountants every single month for decades.
oh my God,
And and
sounds like
you know
torture.
the if you only knew the and it started. What was originally built was serious, but it grew and grew and grew, and it kept taking more and more money, and which I was making, and buying more sophisticated gear from day one. And long story short, it turned out to be very successful, but the pressures involved in it and the amount of time invested in doing that is not something to take lightly. I don't care what business you're in. Nobody I know that was successful in any business started it and was like, okay, I work from 9 to 5. Like, that's not a thing when you start a business.
Entrepreneurship is the only path to wealth in any context or any definition that you have of wealth. There's no other way.
Ideally, as
I
opposed to
mean,
bankruptcy.
well, that's true, but what I love about the story, to me, number one, and and I had this conversation recently with Congressman McGarvey. He's a Democratic congressman from Kentucky. And I also had a conversation the other day with Lenny Stern. He's one of the partners in a company called SS&K in New York. And what I love about these conversations, especially when it comes to, like, quote unquote breadwinning women, which is what I am, in my family, having colleagues, relationships, marriages, friendships, whatever, with men that, as stressful as it can be to be in a society in America where, having a woman, be on top every time, all the time with everything, sometimes it's just like guys get bullied on the playground. But I really do respect men that have no intimidation or no fear or no shame, in having an environment where you have a woman that, might also be a mother, who might also have a business or might have some money, that actually, in partnership, you can, build something together, even if it ends up in the end being in ruins and, bursting into flames. But still, it takes a special kind of a male, in my opinion, and I speak from a woman's perspective, of course,
Well, I
to
don't
be
know
able to
that I
have.
would. I don't know that I would say
That is my story, and I'm sticking to it.
okay, well,
Don't you come at me,
no, no,
because
no, no.
I'm like.
I just don't know if that saying that there was no fear involved would be accurate. There's plenty of fear involved. It's one thing to start a business with
I'm
your
sorry,
wife's
but that was a
family
lot.
money and make it successful, as opposed to taking a loan from your wife's family's, money from your wife's family and
Okay, that's
failing.
fair. That
Uh,
you know what? That's actually fair. That's actually fair. And I will say this. I actually want to go back a little bit. So what I loved is that you started really humble with a little tiny little thing in your apartment, and then, I'm interested in your vision around getting to this new studio, because I remember when we walked in, Grant and I, the first time we ever walked into a studio together, thinking about putting our record together, I was blown away by the quality, the branding, the vibe, the lighting, the carpet, the texture on the furniture. Like, it was just like it just felt so, it just felt amazing. And I was like, you know what? These guys are probably going to be like, making us feel like bad or egos. And it wasn't like that at all. It was like you walked in and
well,
no, seriously, you walked in, you're like, oh my God, I'm a professional musician. Like, you literally had an environment where you had your workers, your staff, your interns, everybody circled around the artist and made them feel, at least that's how I felt and how Grant felt. We felt honored and valued. And so I feel like there's something that goes into that process that money cannot buy.
you do realize that at that early period, what I
Everything
thought
turns
I
into a
knew
joke.
and what I really knew
I
might have
just
been
told you my
very
heart. I
different.
just told you my heart, and everything's okay. Go
It's
ahead.
not a
What?
joke.
Okay, what?
It's that
Go ahead, say
literally
it.
I started this business with a understanding of how all this worked, but with no real world experience. So it was, it's not something that you start a business and you're an expert at. You learn, along the ways in the same way that your clients are learning all the way. I mean, obviously, I knew the basics uh, or even more than the basics, and I had great gear at the time, but I was learning as much as everyone else was that was coming there to hire us. That's a never ending path. You never ever stop learning about your business, how to run your business, how to deal with people, and how to do your craft. That never ends. It still happens every week today. There's no point at which you go, I'm an expert, there's nothing else to learn. And that it's just not how life works, period. You never stop learning. And if you feel like you don't need to learn anything more, it's time to retire
So you're still learning.
every day.
Wow. And so, what is the place that you start to learn? Are you actually learning proactively? You're going proactively, meaning you're going out and looking to learn new things, or are you finding opportunities to learn when you're working with your clients? Like, what is that learning process
Well,
like?
there's new techniques that, because the gear is always changing. I don't mean in gear now, we're talking computer stuff, because hardware is almost not a thing anymore. It's all computer based, and so you're learning new software is really what it boils down to. And because you're learning new tools with the software, you're learning new ways to get to the final result or get to the product, because you're learning about new software that's constantly being evolved. And then I find that the techniques that I use, those evolve over time. How I mix a record today is not the same way that I would have mixed a record a year ago, or 5 years before that, or certainly 10 years before that. So it's just always evolving. So you have no choice but to keep learning, because the tools keep changing. So you have to learn.
So, what do you think makes your mixing style so unique, and how do you actually define yourself?